good morning to the audience from me as well. And as Rudolf said, we have to make a flying swap. So without any further delays, I would like to introduce the two people who have been invited for this panel due to their long-time experience and also knowledge about collecting evidence. And we would like to ask Terry Ward and Christian Biral on their experience on preparing and collecting evidence for the 2014-2020 programming period. I'd like to introduce very briefly each of them just before they speak, so we don't waste a lot of time. Terry Ward is the director of an independent research company on studies and research on economic and social issues called Applica, but he is also a senior research officer in the Department of Applied Economics at the University. Pardon? He was a senior research.
25 years ago.
Oof, sorry for that. He was a senior research officer in the Department of Applied Economics at the University of Cambridge, and he worked many years there. Sorry to say that it's so long ago, and you're still active in this profession. But
I'm very old.
No, come on, don't take it like this. We are old. So sorry. So, in addition to the Applica research company, there is another one, Alphametrics, which was established before that. And he's here to share with us his great experience in analysis and all the studies that he has been conducting on social and economic policies, social issues, and also these have been assigned by European institutions, but also big international research projects were led by Terry Ward. So I would like to ask him now for his intervention. How does he see the evaluation plans that have been prepared already for the 2014-2020 programming period as a key source of information for our future work? Thank you, please, Terry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This must work somehow. Okay, essentially what I want to do is to look at the plans for the 2014-2020 period, the current programming period, and to put it into some kind of perspective to relate what the plans are at the present time to what happened in 2007, 2013. So basically to give an indication of the evaluations that will be undertaken over the period according to the evaluation plans that we're currently assessing. I should say that at the present time we're managing a evaluation help desk for both DG Regional and Urban Policy and DG Employment. And the purpose of the evaluation help desk is essentially to assess the evaluation plans that are being produced by managing authorities, to give some comments on how they might be improved, to follow the evaluations which will then be undertaken based on the evaluation plans, to assess the evaluations, to give some kind of indication of the quality of the evaluations, and again, how they might be improved, and also to give some support to member states in two particular ways. One is that we will organize each year a training session on a specific topic, which is of importance as far as evaluations are concerned. And this year there will be in September in Malta the first training session, which will be on terms of reference, which, as was indicated yesterday by Elliot Stern, is extremely important. We have to start from somewhere when we're carrying out evaluations, and the terms of reference are a key input into the evaluation exercise. At the beginning of the process, and if we don't have good terms of reference, we don't produce good evaluations. And then I want to look back at the evaluations carried out in the 2007-2013 period, just to give an indication how many evaluations there were, how many impact evaluations there were. At the end, I want to summarize what we're finding about the quality of the evaluation plans that are being produced and where the strengths and the weaknesses tend to be. Okay, if we look back at the evaluations carried out in 2007-2013, basically what you can see here is that we counted 917 evaluations that were carried out on the programming period up to the end of 2014. Now, this may be, and this is what we were able to count through our independent experts that we had working in each of the member states. And of that 917 evaluations, 229 were impact evaluations. They were trying to assess the results of the interventions that were being made. And there was a very uneven distribution of both the total evaluations and the impact evaluations across member states. So you can see on the right-hand side of the diagram here, we have the kind of leading performers, Poland in particular, which carried out 265 of the 917 evaluations, which is deserves some kind of prize, I think, and carried out just over 50 impact evaluations of the 229 that were undertaken over the period. And you can see on the left-hand side of the diagram what we might say are the less good performers in terms of the evaluations that were carried out. And we have one or two important countries here, such as Greece, for example, which receives quite a substantial amount from the ERDF and Cohesion Fund, which basically undertook relatively few evaluations over this particular period and undertook no impact evaluations as far as we can detect. Moving on, just to put it into some kind of perspective, we relate the number of evaluations to the number of OPs, and obviously the number of operational programs varies across countries, so we do expect the number of evaluations also to vary across countries. And this basically shows the evaluations per OP. So on average, what we observe is that across the EU as a whole, there were about 3 evaluations per operational program that were carried out during this period. And just under 1 impact evaluations per OP. And again, we have the lead-in performance on the right-hand side of the diagram. So prizes to Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, the Baltic countries, which did very well. And again, we have the less good performers on the left-hand side of the diagram. And you can see for yourselves the extreme variation in evaluations that were undertaken over the period. If we now focus on the impact evaluations and we ask ourselves, well, what kind of impact evaluations were undertaken? This is a kind of rough breakdown of the 229 impact evaluations which were carried out over the period. And we can see that of these 229, about 22% were counterfactual evaluations in some sense. They used some form of econometric method in order to try and isolate the effects of the interventions from other things that were going on at the same time. About 13% were economic models, and 9% used other kinds of quantitative methods, maybe cost-benefit analysis or something of that kind. And we see the bulk of them, 56%, were what are termed theory-based and qualitative methods. Now, I use the word theory-based in a fairly broad and general way, because most evaluations which are qualitative rather than quantitative are termed or are called by the protagonists theory-based. But if you try and detect the theory underlying these evaluations, sometimes it's very difficult to do because the theory is not really well spelled out. And this is a key difficulty in this particular area, is really to undertake good theory-based evaluations. And so far from the assessments that we've made of the period over the years, we've detected very few good theory-based evaluations. Now, if we turn to the 2014-2020 period, so far in the evaluation help desk, we've assessed around 217 evaluation plans. And these cover not only the RDF and the Cohesion Fund, but also the European Social Fund, and there are within them a number of mixed operational programs which combine both support from the ERDF and from the ESF. And what you observe here is the number of evaluation plans that we've assessed in individual countries. So that in France, for example, we've assessed 30, in Italy 24 or so. And again, you can see that it varies across countries so far. I mean, these are the plans we've assessed. It's not that the countries haven't produced the evaluation plans where there are small numbers on the left-hand side of the diagram. It's just that we haven't yet been able to assess them, or they haven't as yet completed the process. Now, if we look at the number of evaluations which are planned according to the evaluation plans, and if we relate those to the number of operational programs, what we observe is a big change from the last programming period. And I have to say that the last programming period already exhibited a big change relative to the programming period that went before. So 917 evaluations that were carried out in the previous programming period is significantly more than the evaluations which were carried out in the 2000-2006 programming period. And this was a period when evaluations were compulsory, in 2000-2006. In 2007-2013, they were discretionary. They were up to member states to decide if they would undertake evaluations or not, and in which particular areas they would undertake evaluations. Now, you can see from here that on average, we observe 11 evaluations planned per operational program, and we saw from the previous slide that it was 3 in 2007-2013. So we've got an almost four-fold increase as compared with the last programming period. But more significantly, perhaps, and appeasing Santiago in particular, that we have 5 impact evaluations per OP which are presently planned. And as we saw before, this compares with less than 1 in 2007-2013. But in addition to that, these are pure impact evaluations. We have on average, 2 evaluations per operational program, which are looking at impact evaluations in combination with looking at procedural aspects at the same time. So essentially, we have, on average, 7 evaluations per operational program, which will include assessing the impact of the interventions, which is a big advance on the previous programming period. But again, you can see that there are significant variations across countries in what is at present planned in this particular respect. And again, you see the leading performers on the right-hand side of the diagram, which is similar to those that we observed in 2007-2013, Lithuania, Estonia, again the Baltic states are very well represented here. And then we see on the left-hand side at the present time, member states, managing authorities in these member states, which at the present time are not planning to undertake a significant number of impact evaluations. Now, if we move for my last set of slides on assessing evaluation plans, basically what we attempt to do is, as evaluation plans come in from managing authorities, we have experts who look at the evaluation plans and try to assess them in terms of six particular aspects. In terms of the management and planning of the evaluations which are included in the evaluation plans. We look at the completeness of the information that is given, the coherence and the appropriateness of the information that is given. We look at the responsibility that is assigned for the evaluations and the way that the evaluation process is coordinated by the managing authorities. We look at the skills and the expertise of the evaluation units within managing authorities who are responsible for commissioning and undertaking the evaluations. We look at the use and the communication of the results of the findings of the evaluations at the end of the day. What happens to the evaluation findings? Is there an attempt to incorporate them within the policy-making process in some sense? Do they feed into the process or not? Is that well explained in the evaluation plans? What happened? Are the results communicated to the general public? Is there an attempt to initiate some kind of discussion on the evaluation findings, which is rarely the case at the present time, I have to say. Many evaluations are undertaken and receive relatively little publicity at all in member states. There is no attempt to engage the general public in some kind of discussion, or even the research community in discussion of evaluation findings. And lastly, we look at the data availability and the data systems which are intended, and the design and methods that it is proposed to use to carry out the evaluations. And what you can see on the diagram here, we rank the evaluation plans from 0 to 4, 0 being there's absolutely no information given at all, to 4 where the plans are quite complete in terms of the information that is given and in terms of the coherence and appropriateness of the information. And you can see that on average, management and planning is relatively well done. We score it at just around 3 or so, and the use and communications of the evaluation results, at least according to the plans, is relatively well specified, as is the responsibility and the coordination of the various functions that are included within the evaluation process. Where we see the most difficulty are on these two aspects here: the design and methods of evaluation and the data availability in the data systems. And these are key aspects, obviously, of the evaluation process. And the difficulty here is many of the evaluation plans that we're seeing are basically saying, look, it's too soon for us now to indicate what methods we will use. We will see later on, and we will see what data we will use when we come to it. Now, as Elliot Stern said yesterday, what is important for our operational programs is that they should be subject to evaluation. evaluation should be designed in from the very start. That means that if evaluation is designed in when the programs are formulated, there has to be, at the same time, some recognition, some indication of the design and methods that will be used for the evaluation. And there has to be the identification of the data that will be used by the evaluation, because if there is not, when it comes to making the evaluation, managing authorities will find that they just don't have the data available to undertake it. And they may, for example, have a very good monitoring system which is collecting information on various indicators which are relevant. But then they want to carry out counterfactual evaluations, and they find that they have no data to include for their control groups. So what is essential in the process is basically that the evaluation needs to be thought about very carefully at the same time as the programs are designed. And the data that will be available to assess the effects and the results of the interventions also needs to be identified, and there needs to be care given to make sure that the data are actually available and that the data are of good quality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In fact, I think you have managed also to reply to one question from yesterday of a colleague, Ms. Ivanova from the Free University of Varna, who was asking about more assistance and training to be provided to the people from the public administration who are involved in evaluations. And you hinted and explained how the help desk that you are managing now will work along these lines, organizing trainings every year on certain topics. I think that's a good message from the side of the Commission, taking care already of this initiative. We've seen the impressive number of evaluations from the last programming period, and the change of direction and substance and quantity and quality of the plans for the current programming period. So it's quite promising, I believe. But it's obvious that the evaluations become more and more complex. So we have now Mr. Christian Biral, who is a practitioner in the area of evaluations. He comes from the Rhone-Alps Regional Authority in France, and he has been in charge of evaluating public policies for years, but he's also providing the methodological support for indicator setting and production and implementation of evaluation reports. So I would like to ask him now to present the experience so far and the way ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It's a great honor for me and for my region, my colleagues who are not here, the colleagues who work with me. So I salute them also, and thank you to Daniele Vidoni who support me for this intervention. Well, my name is Christian Biral, as we said. I am a project manager in the Auvergne-Rhone-Alpes Region Authority in France, and my presentation, has 3 parts: the road to the construction of evaluation plans, our evaluation plan, Rhone-Alpes, and in conclusion we'll see opportunities and limits of the exercise for us in region. Well, our first step in the evaluation plans was when we discovered the obligations of the European Commission in the regulation, and later on we received the guidance document, and it helped us. So I won't read the obligations, because beyond obligations we must see the strategic role of the evaluation plans. And we can read on this slide the main message. The evaluation should be used to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of programs. So the three objectives of the evaluation plans: to manage the program, the evaluation plan has to facilitate the sharing of knowledge on what works and how it works in different policy fields. To improve the quality of evaluations, we have talked very much about quality yesterday, Mr. Elliot Stern, just now Mr. Ward. Well, the evaluation plan will support quality of evaluations, and it will contribute to the design and implementation of programs and policies to prepare the next programming period. So, to reach these objectives, we choose to organize a seminar on evaluation plans because we need to get into the process with all stakeholders. It's very important for us. I don't know if you have seen the slide. Well, if you have seen France in the slide of Mr. Ward, but I've seen France very far away in the 2007 and 2013. We have a problem of a culture of evaluation in France. Well, I wasn't working in 2007 and 2013 on evaluation for European programs, so perhaps it explains. No, I'm joking. No, this is to explain that for us it's very important, this culture of evaluation. That's why we choose this seminar, but it's not finished. This is really important for us. So what were the objectives of the seminar? To get involved in the whole program, because agents of operational units often know the actions of their directorate, their policies, but they don't know the whole program. So it's very important for us to understand, to give meaning to the evaluation plan, and to understand the evaluation process, and to understand the importance of monitoring. And also this seminar, an objective was to identify the evaluation themes. So it was a great success. We are quite proud of this seminar because that day everyone demonstrated creativity, and everyone went beyond his own area of expertise, and everyone helped to establish assessment priorities. So we are very proud of this seminar. The department where I work is responsible for the evaluation of 4 programs. Here you see the Interreg Alcotra cross-border cooperation program, Italy-France. We have also the Rhone-Alps operational program Rhone-Saône. There are 2 rivers, the Rhone et la Saône. And the Rhone-Alps operational program ERDF, ESF, and I will focus on this program because anyway, the process was the same for the different programs for the evaluation plans. We have also Rural Development Program, EAFRD, and we provide expertise for the ERDF Operational Massif Central program. Well, so what are the elements of the evaluation plan? There are 3 main parts, and now we will see how we wrote our evaluation plan, because an evaluation plan is also a document, a living document, as I think you know here. So this slide, I won't ask you to read every line of this slide. It's only to show you that our operational program has 18 specific objectives. So a possible choice could have been 18 evaluations, but we choose a limited number of topics covering the entire specific objectives. And now this is our evaluation plan. 1 implementation evaluation. This will start soon. 4 thematic impact evaluations. and the ex-ante and the strategic environmental evaluations to prepare the next period. How did we choose the evaluation themes? This is the explanation for the selection of the themes covered in the evaluation plan. I told you on one hand there was the seminar, and during these seminars some themes have been identified, and on the other hand we did an information meeting between the objectives of the European strategy, our intervention logic, its financial model, the transversal approaches, and the past evaluations. And so we have the 4 evaluations themes you can see below: development of innovation, climate change, energy transition, improvement in unemployment, and also well-being, an evaluation of well-being in our region. We also, for each evaluation theme, we studied the contribution of each specific objective, because every specific objectives must be covered in the evaluation. So we had a review of specific objectives by evaluation themes, and we have a table coverage of in all evaluations themes. So this is only an excerpt to show you. This is only the specific objectives 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 5, and 6. We have also had to imagine a timetable of evaluation. As Elliot Stern told us yesterday, it's a demanding exercise because, as he said, we need time. We have to wait until the effects can be observable, but also to manage the program, the evaluations need to be started early enough to provide useful conclusions. So it's very hard to choose the moments. We have also other tools to choose the timetable, but we got not enough time to explain you now. Now we got to prepare evaluations, as Mr. Ward said. We tried to do our best. So we created technical sheets for each evaluation with these items. So there are tools for us for again sharing and organizing evaluations. We try to put ourselves in evaluators' places so we can anticipate. We prepare the work of evaluators. So we also use another tool. I think Silvia Vignetti told us about the theories of action yesterday, the logograms, which is a tool for structuring the logic of a public intervention. It's very useful to illustrate the causal links between the outputs, the outcomes, and the results. Here is an example. Well, you don't have to read because, and it's in French. Sorry, but it's only an example. On the bricks of on the left you have the outputs, and then on the right you got the outcomes, and finally the results. Well, it represents what should happen. It's in an ideal world. It's not what will happen. You know, it's like in Disney films. But it's an interesting tool because with this you can share a common understanding of a policy being evaluated with all the directorates and the other stakeholders. You can identify which elements needs to be monitored for each brick. A brick is, for example, an output or a group of outputs, and the same for the outcomes. So you can identify evaluation questions, you can list judgment criteria, you can prepare the data collection. And so after that you can choose the methods, we hope. It's very hard. So what is interesting also is that you can see when the chain is too long, it will be very hard to realize a counterfactual evaluation. And if the causal links are too complicated, it will be hard also. So perhaps you'll have to mix between methods. This is an example. It's the same example as the slide before. It's just a written for a better reading. This example is an axis, only an axis, applied innovation for the CBC program Alcotra. Well, it's just an example to show how useful can be a logigram, because we have started to think about the methods. And this example, what do we see on this example? Well, Alcotra is a very large territory. It's very vast. So to launch an evaluation, an impact evaluations, we must precisely delimitate the scope of the evaluation in the places where Alcotra has an impact. With this logigram, it appears that the red outcomes, or pink outcomes, well, they are necessary before achieving the orange outcomes. So, in the terms of the of reference of the evaluation, we will write that, first of all, the evaluator will have to measure the achievement of the red outcomes, and he will have to understand, to explain what happened before going to the orange outcomes. So in this example, that means to answer how was the quality of partnerships, how are the cooperations, have we seen a change of behavior between economic development actors, and so on which perimeter. So then after that we have answers and informations that will help for the evaluation. Well, that was just an example. Now, the conclusions. Here we have the limits, the questions, which is the dangerous part of the presentations, because we don't know yet. We don't have the answer in my region. Do the evaluations meet the ambitions of the European Commission? We hope so, but we don't know yet, because of the limitations of the methods. Just like Mr. Ward said, will the quality of monitoring data, will it be sufficient? If we do counterfactual evaluations, what about the validity of our samples? Well, that's the questions for us. And we also talk about the costs in this slide, the design cost of evaluation plans. Well, it's many hours of work, and the costs also of evaluations. So these are questions we don't know the answer yet. How effective will the exercise be? We hope it will be positive. But, well, will the use of communication and evaluation be useful? Just like we saw on the presentation of Mr. Ward. Will the local elected representatives be involved? Because as I told you, in France, it's difficult for us to get our elected representatives involved. And will they get this culture of evaluation? Now, the positive points, the construction of the plans, it's a turning point for us managing authorities. It's a challenging exercise, but it's a virtuous one. It's an opportunity for us to professionalize our services, because we work and we work with the stakeholders. So as a conclusion, I'd like to mention that in France, we try to promote the European culture of evaluation. I've got an example this month. In Paris, we organized with the Evaluation French Society a seminar. I've got in this room some French evaluator friends who will be there and organize this. The theme of this seminar is Evaluation of European programs, an opportunity for public policies. You can see this on the internet. I'm not cheating, and I've not constructed this only for the presentation. This is public. So we will see how European regulations contribute to improve design evaluations approaches. How can it be for us an inspiration? Well, we hope this seminar will be as successful as its present conference in Sofia, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed for this presentation and sharing your experience with the evaluation plan. I think that both presentations raised two key points. One is data availability or lack of data, and the other is about the involvement of stakeholders, which are two key elements of having a success with the evaluation. I would like now to give you the possibility to ask any questions to Mr. Ward or Mr. Biral, please. Can we have a microphone here? It's coming.
Claudia Magdalena from Romania, and I'm an evaluation commissioner. I have two questions, one for Mr. Ward and one for Mr. Biral. In terms of evaluation of quality of the evaluation planning, you use some indicators and some criteria. First indicators refers to numbers of evaluations, numbers of evaluation reports, and whatever. I'm not so sure that this is very meaningful. For example, the regulation says very clear what means impact evaluation, in what terms impact evaluation should be done. And it is stated that impact evaluation should be done in terms of GDP and employment, depends on the size of the program, and in relation with each specific objective of priorities, of each priority. In this respect, we saw the example of Mr. Biral, who constructing the evaluation plan around the objectives of the program. And my belief is that the quality of evaluation planning should take this into account in terms of how much the evaluations are linked, or impact evaluations are linked to the objectives of the operational programs, because we should evaluate the impact on them. This is one observation or questions. For Mr. Biral, I saw you are very interested for us, construction on the intervention logic of the operational program, starting from outputs to the final outcomes. My question is, to what extent this intervention logic or this theory has been included in ex-ante evaluation, or this exercise was done after that, after the ex-ante evaluation was completed and served only to design the evaluation plan? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would suggest that we provide the chance to get answers to these questions, and then we ask for additional.
I absolutely agree. I mean, it's not simply a question of counting the number of evaluations that are included in evaluation plans, and it wasn't simply a question of indicating before the number of evaluations that were carried out in the previous programming period. We also attempted to assess the quality of the evaluations in the previous period. And basically what we found is that, to be diplomatic, the quality varied. It was extremely variable across evaluations. And too many evaluations were of fairly low quality, we have to say. And in terms of the evaluation plans, we don't only look at basically whether the information is given or not about whether an impact evaluation will be carried out, but also we look at the what is specified as the objective of the program, of the intervention, and whether the evaluation which is planned relates directly to the objective. And the objective may not only be in terms of the output of firms or the employment, it may be in terms of productivity, it may be in terms of an increase in exports or whatever. But we attempt to look at the, shall we say, the coherence or the appropriateness of the evaluation, of the details that are given in the evaluation plans about the evaluations that are being undertaken. So the quality of the evaluations is absolutely key. And what we're concerned with here in the evaluation help desk, as I said before, was not only to kind of monitor the process that is being undertaken, but also to try and assist and support managing authorities, member states, in carrying out good evaluations. So, for example, we have a peer review process where we have a panel of expert evaluators, who essentially look at the better evaluations and comment on them and review them in the same way as they would, say, an academic journal article, in attempt to indicate the areas where evaluations could be improved. You know, to try and identify the elements of a good evaluation as opposed to a less good evaluation. And we also have a support facility for member states. So if member states want help in designing evaluations, we have a team of experts available who can assist them in a particular aspect of evaluation, in addition to the training that I mentioned before. And we hope that this resource will actually be used. I mean, it's there, it's available, it's free of cost, and basically we're there to assist member states in carrying out good evaluations. And that the objective of the exercise is to improve the overall quality of evaluations which are carried out on the structural fund programs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ward. So everyone is invited to take advantage of the existence of the help desk and ask any questions, and you'll get all the support you need. So, Mr. Biral now.
Well, I try to answer in English, and I don't practice English every day, so I hope you apologize, and perhaps you will help me. Well, about your question for the intervention logic, well, I think it's a good idea you gave to me, and I think I will use it. We didn't prepare a logigram of the ex-ante evaluation for two reasons. First reason is that in 2007 and 2013 in France, the managing authority was national. It was the state in region. It wasn't the regions, us. So I didn't work in the terms of reference of this evaluation ex ante for 2014 to 2020. But I will have to, with my department, to work, of course, on this next evaluation ex ante. We always use the logograms, always. And we have used the logograms also for the implementation evaluation. We haven't yet prepared a logigram for the ex ante, but I think you're right. I think it's a good idea. The outputs should be the diagnostic, territorial, the context, evaluation, and then the outcomes can be the identifying the strategy, and then the final results would be what is the construction of a plan, the intervention logic, and so is it effective? So I think it's a good idea. I will use it, and I will tell it's my idea. So I thank you. No, I think it's a good idea. Well.
Thank you very much. Yes, we will let everybody ask their questions.
Hello, my name is Cristina Vasilescu. I'm from the Institute for Social Research in Italy. I have two questions. One is for Mr. Ward. I would like to know whether you also plan to have an analysis of how much these evaluations are used and how they fed into the policies, because we have seen some, for Italy, for instance, Italy is the second as the highest number of evaluation. I'm very curious to know how much these are used, and also for the other member states. And for Mr. Biral, I have 2 questions. One regards the logic of intervention. What I did not see, but this is a weakness of the logic of intervention, is the mechanisms that produce the pink results. So we know that we need the pink results in order to reach the orange results, the pink results being the intermediary ones. And I was wondering whether you also focused on how we reach or those changes in the actors' behaviors and so on, and if this is reflected in your evaluations. And the second question regards the more... I'm very curious to know whether your authority or you as project manager for evaluation and the program in itself foresees measure for building capacity at the level of beneficiaries, because there is an increasing attention on getting results, of course. So these results should be, data on results should be gathered at project level, first of all. And I'm very curious to know whether there are measures to support beneficiaries, because there are some areas where beneficiaries are very small and not always have the necessary capacity or the necessary budget to gather data on their results. So I would like to know how you plan to tackle this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask for one more question, and then we get the replies, and then we get another round over there.
Hello, my name is Irina Pancheva, and I work for Lumos Foundation. While all of this has been very interesting and informative, I have noticed that under social inclusion, only employment has been addressed, or let's say mostly. So I would like to ask whether in the next evaluation of the current period, you would look more at other issues and particularly at the implementation of the ex-ante conditionality on social inclusion and its investment priority on the transition from institutional to community and based services. This is something we would like to see reflected on in the next evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Ward to reply to the first questions, and then Mr. Biral, and then I'll reply as well.
Yeah, it's a very difficult question. What in practice happens to the evaluation findings, and how far they're actually used in practice? I mean, you mentioned the example of Italy, which in which a relatively large number of evaluations are carried out, as it were. But it's never quite clear what actually happens to the findings and whether they're implemented in practice. I think the difficulty is in this area that we can identify, and we see it in the evaluation plans, the actual procedures, arrangements that are put in place to try and ensure that the evaluation findings are actually put into practice and feed into policy making in some sense. I think the difficulty is trying to identify whether that actually happens in practice. The procedures may be there, and the procedures may be followed to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, policy remains as it always was. I think it's in this particular area. I think what is most important is to try and establish an evaluation culture, because the first thing we need to try and convince governments of is that evaluations actually matter, that the findings of evaluations are important. It's not simply a question of complying with what the European Commission is asking member states or managing authorities to do. Managing authorities ought to believe that it's essential to carry out evaluations in order to improve the policies that they're implementing. It shouldn't simply be a question of complying with the regulations, as it were. And unfortunately, at the present time, too many of the evaluations which are carried out for compliance reasons. There's no intention of using the results or the findings in any constructive sense. And this is a difficulty. So the first thing is to establish an evaluation culture. The next is to try and get some kind of debate going between, say, the managing authorities that carry out the evaluations and the research community, the evaluation community, as it were, and the general public. I mean, to get some kind of discussion, debate, some kind of interest in the evaluation findings. And this, I think, is the surest way of ensuring that the results actually have some impact on policies. So it's not simply a question of procedures, arrangements, etc. It's the culture which is essentially important. On the second question on social inclusion and access to essential services, I think this is the tendency. I think is to assess and evaluate what we can measure, and in a certain sense, social inclusion is relatively difficult to measure as compared with, for example, counting the number of jobs which are created, or trying to assess what happens to people who've gone through some kind of training course, whether they're employed after a particular period of time or not. Question of whether they become more socially included as a result of that is relatively difficult, and whether they have access to essential services is relatively difficult to answer as well. I mean, basically, these are legitimate objectives of cohesion policy, and it's essentially up to the managers' authorities, the member states, if they devote more resources to these particular objectives, then obviously the evaluations need to tackle these particular issues and pay more attention to it than has happened in the past.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ward. Now, Mr. Biral, for a quick reply.
Well, the first question was how can we measure the changement of behavior of actors? You were telling about Alcotra program with the simplified slide of the theory of action. Well, Alcotra is a particular program because it's cross-border. So it means that the partnerships and collaborations need to exist to get this cross-border projects. So there are some actions that have started in the former period. There are actions starting now, and so we want to know if these partnerships, former partnerships, are growing or if they are focusing on something. If these partnerships, collaborations, where are they, on which territory? So you're asking me the method. I told in my presentation that we want to involve the stakeholders. So we have a collaborative approach. So we have a training plan, and Alcotra is our evaluation plan of Alcotra has been approved only 2 weeks ago. So the training plan has begun. I have done myself some evaluation trainings, and I will return in Italy for this. Parlo anche l'italiano un po', perché la signora è italiana, ho capito bene. So we will have a meeting with these people, operational units in France and in Italy, also to think about this, because to measure the change of behavior, we can imagine surveys, we can imagine, of course, case studies, because we have to identify with these operational units what kind of collaborations they emerged. So to imagine case studies with these typologies, and to ask, well, to imagine this kind of methods, I think. Well, perhaps other things, but I don't know yet, because I am not alone. It's very important for me to say that, because I work with the team, I work with the stakeholders. For me, it's very important to have a quality of management of our evaluation plan. So I hope it's an answer, I hope. The second question was for the beneficiaries. Well, where I work, we have now, because it's changing, we have a European directorate, and my evaluation unit is not in the European directorate. So we have this separation because the European Commission says that it's better to have independence. So for the beneficiaries, this to help them, it's, for me, it's in the implementation evaluation that it will be observed. So this is well, it's a kind of work of this directorate, a European directorate, and I am helping for the evaluation. So yes, it's previous in the implementation evaluation to ask the beneficiaries and to try to measure that. Yeah, I hope I answered.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank Mr. Ward and Mr. Biral for their presence today, for their interesting discussion, presentations, but also replies to the questions. We are very, very late, and I'm totally strongly advised not to continue the discussion now. I saw a few other questions. I would ask the colleagues to raise these questions directly to Mr. Ward and Mr. Biral in the coffee break, and the bad news that the coffee break will be 15 minutes only. So please, be quick. Thank you very much.